Hi everyone, we're going to continue looking at Unit 3, Day 26, using the Scale tool. Today we're going to focus on Step 3, the Evidence and Temporal Scale, Grade 10. So just a reminder, we're dealing with the Rwanda Genocide. We're going to take a further look at the genocide, the human cost and consequences. We already looked at a spatial scale, now we're going to look at a temporal scale. Remember, this is a very tough topic. You're going to treat it with the utmost seriousness and respect. And if you're uncomfortable, you gotta talk to your teacher about it and send the message because you're talking about genocide and mass atrocities. It's tough. That's why we need to deconstruct it. We've already talked about the scale tool. Today we're going to look at the temporal scale, immediate, short-term, and long-term effects. How we're going to look at something if we've already looked specifically at where it came in, how it influenced individuals and then greater areas in the world. Now we're going to look at the effects. Eventually, in a different video, we may look at historical understanding, but not right now. Now, we're going to look at the same two sources that we looked at for Step 2. We're going to look at for Step 3. We're going to look at this time, we're going to work with Rwanda 20 years later. That's the source that you worked on your own last time. And you're going to work with the autobiography after we look at how we work with this particular tool, which is the evidence and temporal scale. So based on our reading, we're going to have a primary source here. What's the cause of the event? And you could technically do this with a bunch of different sources. We're going to model with one source, which is the article that we looked at last time, Rwanda 20 years later, woman who forgives man who took her hand and killed her baby. Now, again, you can do the same thing we did last time. You can go to the article itself. You can click on the tab and you can get read aloud going if you don't want to read it yourself. Or here's my read aloud. I'm going to set it up for myself. Personally, I would pause and read it myself, but you should know that there's another choice you can make, and that is a different, just a thought here. I set it to print, but I didn't actually want to print it. I saved it as a PDF, so this way I can read the article and I can look at things and take them apart as I need to. Because we're analyzing, remember, a story of ethnic violence, extreme guilt, and some degree reconciliation. It's talking about 20 years later, they're trying to make peace about Rwanda, 20 years after its Hutu majority killed more than 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus. Now, the Rwanda government is still accused by human rights groups of holding an iron grip on power, stifling, meaning pushing down dissent, people who disagree, and killing political opponents. Even critics give President Paul Kagame credit for leading the country toward peace that seemed impossible 2 decades ago. So you can read through the article that way. Totally up to you. Notice that the ads come out when you read it, so you might not want to do that. Your choice. In read aloud, it won't do that for you. Now, you've read the article, right? What do we do now? You have to think about, based on what we just read, what were the consequences of the Rwanda genocide? Well, the immediate consequence, right? It says immediate, and I'm shutting off the highlighter. Immediate is that hundreds of thousands. I'm just going to say thousands. Yes, it's hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands of Tutsis were murdered. I'm going to put this in quotes. Regular Hutus were convinced to go murder their neighbors. There was a reign, that highlight again, reign of terrorism throughout Rwanda. I don't want to use the term reign of terror, that's France. So now, Short term. Obviously, there was the death, there was destruction. Now, in this particular article, we had children murdered, and we had country needed to rebuild. I'd say physically and emotionally. Long term. Well, we're 20 years later, so let's talk long term. Working on bringing groups, they're working on bringing both sides together for, what was that vocabulary word? Reconciliation. I'm going to go back to the article just to make sure that I know what I'm talking about here for long term. It says genocide was really the making of decades fueled by, this is cause, hate speech. That's all going for context. But going back here, that it's really complicating this divide, meaning that some people can't even tell the difference. Now let's look at what's going on today. It's talking about this group. Now, personally, I copy it, Control C after I hided it. It's a group of genocide killers and survivors called Ukur Kuganzi. So groups like Control VIP that work together to promote peace. Still have issues in Rwanda today. I mentioned in the last video that Paul Rusesabagina was actually arrested by the president of Rwanda. Things are not simple, okay? The president of Rwanda is very tough. That's how he keeps the peace. But he's arresting someone like Paul Rusesabagina for terrorism. On that note, you're going to look through his source again. You might want to turn on the read aloud again. Using the autobiography of Paul Rusesabagina and that document, what were the consequences of the Rwanda genocide? What was the immediate consequences? Think about it from his perspective in the hotel. Short term, what was going on? And I'm thinking back to specifically that source about a machete dripping blood and the horrible murder that went on. And then long term, what happened to a country when such awful things happen? It's tough, but again, I think you can do it.